In this video, I have an awful week at WeatherTech Laguna Seca, chasing an ever-decreasing I rating as I lose hand over fist in week 4 of mission improvement. And all this from a very ego-battered, older gamer's perspective. Week 4. Welcome to the chaos of WeatherTech. Oh dear. Strap in for this one, people. This is not going to be a pretty video as I look at week 4 of Mission Improvement, a series of videos where I try to improve my racecraft, such as it is. I've created a playlist from the previous videos in this series, which you can find here, and also includes the introduction video where I explain what this series is actually about. This is week 4 and I'm sticking with the Production Car Challenge, a D license race at the WeatherTech full course in America. For this track, the pace analysis tool is telling me that an average lap for someone of my I rating, which at the start of the week at least was a glorious 1500, should be about 1 minute 38. But if I want to be on the podium, I need to run at least a 1 minute 36. Yeah. No chance. Being a multi-class race, same as last week, I found the heavy traffic aspect to this series did mean the winners of my splits, at least in the MX5 class, were very rarely coming close to the pace tool's prediction, tending to have a best time of around 1 minute 38 and an average time in the 1 minute 40 area. So this week, the pace analysis tool was off by 2 seconds for both the average lap time and also the best lap time. In addition to the chaos of having different cars on the track at the same time, a large contributing factor to these variable times is probably down to the course itself, which I personally found very challenging. Pretty much every corner is a fast, tight turn, sometimes complicated by elevation changes. One of the corners is even called the corkscrew and has such an extreme elevation change that for a brief moment you can't even see the track from the driver's seat. With a limited number of straights, passing by faster cars also becomes more complex, with M2s often snapping in front of the slower drivers just before a turn and slamming on their brakes, with all the chaos that brings. This all adds up to a course best described as challenging, so much so that I struggled, I really did, to find any way to improve my racing on this track, and often found myself at the back of the pack for most of the race and hemorrhaging both safety rating and I rating with each race I ran. Deploying all the tools that I had used on previous tracks helped a bit, with the driving line giving me some gains, although the braking advice offered was often just blatantly wrong, such as this corner where it advised me to brake when in fact I just needed a lift. Trophy AI was also useful in working out the best acceleration points, which on this course of sloping corners was very useful. And finally, Garage 61 proved to be where I got the best advice for not only surviving this track, a feat of ingenuity on its own, but how to get a slightly better track time. And of course, the human advice I got from my Discord group proved invaluable. The best tip I got this week was to drive slowly around the track and deliberately take the car off the track as far as I could. This is in a practice lap, of course, just to see where the limits of receiving an off-track penalty would actually occur. It was an eye-opener to see how far off the track I could actually wander before I got a 1X. And that knowledge alone allowed me to position the car better in a race in order to get a smoother entry line and a quicker exit line. So, with all this advice and learning and everything else, how did I actually do?
This isn't going to be pleasant.
Week 4, results and the big cost of losing big. The short answer to how did I do is bloody awful. The long answer is of course apparent by simply looking at my Excel results sheet. Yeah, not great. This week, I managed to get on track for 6 races, mostly racing over the weekend, as weekday races on an hourly schedule are still something I find a challenge to fit into real life. The increase in my own I rating to 1500 at the start of this week placed me in faster more aggressive splits, where I found myself poorly equipped racecraft-wise to deal with that level of racing ability. These people aren't aliens, but they are faster and better than me, and that became very apparent race after race. Looking at my tracking sheet, you can see that at one point I was in a strength of field of over 2,000, and that my best lap times were consistently slower than the competition around me. And combine that with the fierce and heavy traffic and a challenging course, and I had what could be described as a fairly miserable week. That's not to say I gave up or didn't put the effort in. I certainly trained hard, and at one point I even tried thinking outside the box and reduced my fuel level to give me a slight tactical advantage. However, I may have reduced that a little bit too much, because on the very last lap I started to run out of fuel just as I reached the corkscrew. This is on the very last lap, and I managed to maintain just enough momentum to limp across the finishing line, running on fumes, with all the other cars I'd passed earlier zipping smugly past me, with my I rating taking an immediate loss for my efforts. In fact, in this week, I managed to wipe out nearly all my I rating gains for the entire of Season 2, losing a stonking 165 I rating points over these 6 races, taking me down to just over 1,300. My safety rating also took a number of hits, and I finished the week with a net loss to that statistic as well. Losing in these types of race can cost a lot of I rating. Look at this race. Here I am losing 43 I rating points, minus 43. But right down here at the bottom of the MX pile, this poor fellow has minus 87 I rating points on one single race. Ouch, that's a lot. If your I rating is 1,500 and you lose just 75 I rating points per race, you only need to do that over 20 races to get to 0. A scary thought that has left me feeling as though this week's racing, although challenging, wasn't, if I am to be honest, something I personally found to be as much fun as the last 3 weeks racing. In fact, I did so badly, I don't even have a favourite race to show you, as that would just be me slowly moving backwards down the running order before finishing 25 minutes later in last place. So instead, I am going to move this video straight to the conclusions.
I am so sad. I am so very, very sad.
Conclusions. So I am back to feeling like cannon fodder again. Less a competitor and more like a cheap plastic action figure, with my I rating being like my patience, volatile in the extreme. Which really is all a bit of a shame, but I guess that on my journey to improve my racecraft, I have to accept that some weeks are not going to be as successful as others, and that some courses I am going to find personally tough. This is not just to do with my ability to cope with certain tracks, but also the value of the I rating I carried that particular week. For example, looking at the figures for Season 1 of 2025 on the website iracingstats.net, link in the description, you can see that when racing the rookies, most days the number of splits is very high, particularly in the latter part of the evening and the weekends. But if we now look at the production car challenge, only one step up at a D license, you can see straight away that the number of splits is significantly lower. And this limited number of splits is about the same for the C-Class Advanced MX-5 series. This all means, of course, I have more chance of being placed in a split with drivers of a much higher driving ability than myself when looking to compete in races outside of the rookies. This is further exasperated when I have an I rating of 1500, which in the D-Class Production Car Challenge, which sometimes only has 2 splits to choose from, means that I am likely to be in the higher split and racing people way beyond my ability to match or catch. This is, of course, how the system works, and it's not unfair, but it does mean that at my stage of battling my way to improve my sim racing, competing at this level inevitably means a loss of I rating and or safety rating. and some fundamentally disappointing races as well. This week, the loss of so much iRating, almost all of my Season 2 gains, and a loss of safety rating as well, albeit not quite as bad, has left me feeling a little depressed at the end of a week's racing. In fact, I had begun to wonder if Mission Improvement should be renamed Mission Abject Failure. But then someone on my Discord channel mentioned that WeatherTech is next week's race with the rookie class. And perhaps it would be an interesting experiment to see if A, I had learned anything at all in my week of racing here in multi-class, B, if 2 weeks racing the same course instead of the usual iRacing 7-day rotation would lead me to a better understanding of the challenges of this particular track, and finally C, if having a greater number of splits meant I would be racing against people nearer to my own ability level, would I see better results on my score sheet? This all sounds good in theory, but if I'm going to do any of this, it's clear I am going to need more help than a dotted line on the track or the suggestions of an AI program. I am going to need a human coach. And next week, I hope to have the help of an experienced driver. Please join me for what I hope to be a more upbeat Mission Improvement video next week. And if you have any suggestions about how to race WeatherTech in the MX-5, please post below. In the meantime, I hope you found this video helpful. And until the next one, race clean, and I'll see you on track. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click the like button, and if you haven't already done so, subscribe. Click the little bell icon if you want to be notified of any future videos.